Welcome to Mysterious Universe, Season 33, Episode 14. Coming up on the show, we've got Catching the Dream Intruders, when humanoids come for supper and getting shoved into the alien containment room. I'm your host, Benjamin Grundy. Joining me is Aaron Wright. Get in there!
I'm taken with the alien containment room, but tell me more about the invasion of these, dream invaders?
It's all from this new book I just discovered from Tyler Koala. It's called Bleed Through, Tales from Another Timeline. These guys remind me of us in a little way. They run this podcast. It's called Journey to Truth, which why do I keep doing this? I do this every show. Like, I just don't set things up. It's Tyler and Aaron. They run a paranormal podcast. It'd be great if it was Ben and Aaron. It's called Journey to Truth. And I would say they cover more extreme topics than we cover.
You mean conspiracies or?
Yeah, they're interviewing super soldiers and the whistleblowers.
How have they not burnt out?
Well, they've been going for years. And this new book, which I'm just going to capture my screen here so we can see it. That's their podcast there, Journey to Truth. Never heard these guys before. Totally new. But this book, Bleed Through, from Tyler, he's one of the hosts, it's just full of his personal experiences. And I love these stories where it starts off with, just like a weird, vivid dream. So everything seemed real, something odd about this dream. And then it just goes into full-on, Men in Black encounters.
Really? This is very common, though. It's so common for anyone that's, whether you're podcasting or, creating YouTube videos, or certainly authors that are in this field. You find that anyone that's been in this field long enough, it's like they got into it because they had something uncanny, something unsettling happen to them. And then as they continue to go through it, it's like the intelligence pursues them.
Yeah, it's also a bit of a cautionary tale there. There's Tyler on the left and Aaron on the right. That's in their studio. And it's almost like I look at these guys and I think this is maybe what could have happened to us if we drank too much of the Kool-Aid and just never stopped.
We're just two cynical old bastards that are just like, nah, let's not. I don't have the time. I don't care.
If back in 2005 we made Linda Moulton Howe our production manager or something, we would have ended up like these guys.
That almost did happen. So maybe.
Yeah, very close. We moved to America back then and we just signed her up. Or she signed us up.
I think we've, on all levels, we've dodged a bullet.
Yeah, so
I'll let these guys take the torch.
This story, though, is just wild. There's all sorts of insane stuff that you will not see coming. There's spirit attachment. There's weird aliens. There's Men in Black.
Okay.
It's just really incredible. What have you got coming up?
Well, in the plus extension, I want to go into some of these stories of extreme humanoid encounters. Speaking about extreme stuff, humanoid encounters are really a dime a dozen when you think about it. People see, strange creatures. Sometimes there's a light associated with it. But there are some cases out there that really are these types of cases that can come across as how the hell did that happen? What on earth was that experience? And then when you try to compartmentalize it, pigeonhole it to go, oh, that was an alien, or that doesn't seem to work that way. So I've got some stories of weird premonitions, some weird crisis apparitions seemingly connected to alien encounters, and then some supernatural stuff coming up in the plus extension.
Okay. Sounds like it's going to gel nicely. Yeah, well, let's jump into Tyler's story. Again, the book is Bleed Through, Tales from Another Timeline. It's huge. It's quite big, so I'm just going to kind of brush through some of the highlights. I haven't heard the podcast before, as I said, but all personal experiences, and he does start very personal. Back in March of 2011, sadly, his mother passed away quite suddenly. And it was one of those situations where he had a big argument with her. That's
that's sad.
The last time he saw her. He was 24 years old at the time, and he was a cocky kid. He felt like he had everything figured out. He knew all the answers. But his mother's passing really hit him. It really kind of jolted him out of this state. He said in the 7 years that followed, he took this path. And we've heard this story time and time again, drugs, sex, alcohol, just really poor decisions. He says
he's dealing with grief.
Yeah, in a big way. But for 7 years, it's full on. He said some of the stupid decisions he made during that period, he's surprised he's alive. He was in some really shady situations. He admits he was tremendously lost, angry, and confused. But then the dreams began. And he said, I began having the most incredibly vivid dreams. Many were about my mother and other things I couldn't begin to explain. He He said some were so real that to this day, I still question whether or not I was experiencing some kind of alternate reality. But he says it wasn't just that. Horrifying night terrors, the likes of which you would only see in the movies, were infiltrating my dreams. He said my once peaceful nights were turned into a fight for my life, and it was around this time I suffered my first case of sleep paralysis. So he goes into this hypnagogic sleep paralysis state, which, of course, if you've been listening to this show, you know, paralyzed, can't move, wakes up in the middle of the night.
Some kind of figure in the room.
Feeling of pressure on the chest. And yeah, he had the full gamut where he was seeing this entity every time it happened. But his first episode, and this is why I like this guy's story because he's just curveballs everywhere. His first sleep paralysis episode, he said he'll never forget it. He was wide awake. It was 9 p.m., normal weeknight, and he had to get up early for the next morning. So he basically fell asleep to a Seinfeld DVD. This was his thing. And he said, just as I was dozing off, he hadn't fallen asleep. And he said his TV remote started levitating, started lifting up off the table. And he says, I watched in awe as it hovered weightless above my head. And his reaction is to reach out and grab it. And then something incredible happened. He started to float off the bed.
Okay.
Again, not asleep. He claims he's fully awake. And he said, I became weightless. I was quite literally floating. He said, I tried to process what was happening as I was getting further away from my bed, inching closer towards the ceiling. Now, he had heard of out-of-body experiences. So he's expecting to look down and, you know the story, see his body there. And he goes, oh, I'm out of body.
But it's not that. He's actually levitating himself.
Nope. He's just floating.
Malcolm Robinson. No, is it Malcolm Robinson from Malcolm's Anomalies?
Malcolm Smith.
Malcolm Smith, I'm sorry. Yeah, Malcolm Smith. We just covered his book and I just happened to be flicking through it after we did it because I thought, oh, I'll check out some of the other stories. And he references this weird case of what appeared to be some type of spirit attachment, almost possession. And in that particular case, this young girl started levitating.
Well, it's the old trope, isn't it? From the poltergeist movies.
Well, it is. But I'm wondering if that he's going through this grieving and he's drinking, all those things that kind of seem to attract spirit possession and attachment. Is that possibly what's occurring here?
Well, yeah, you're right on the money as to where this goes because he spins around and he
on his own, or does it just like whatever the force is does it?
Well, it's like he manages to roll over in this levitating state, and he claims he could see his reflection in the mirror in his room, so he could tell, you know, he wasn't dreaming. This was really happening, and he's basically doggy paddling in the air. He said, "My arms and legs were then forcefully crossed into what I call the mummy position, so crossed over his chest, and he slammed back down onto the bed." And that's when the pressure started. That's when this immense pressure started on his chest. He was paralyzed from head to toe, and he started to scream for help because it felt like it was a fight for his life. And anyone who's experienced this will know exactly what he's talking about. It really does feel like
something's trying to get in.
Something's trying to kill you. Out of pure desperation, he starts like pep talking himself in his head, like, get up, Tyler. Come on, you can do it. You got to fight it. You got to fight it. And this must have worked because, I mean, it seemed like an eternity, he said, but eventually he could move, like, you know, move one muscle, and then he breaks the spell and he jumps up and runs out of his room as fast as he can down the hallway, just freaking out, saying, what the F was that? You know, he's absolutely terrified. He describes eventually like trying to calm down and creeping back to his room and expecting to see an intruder or something in there. But of course, the coast was clear. There was nothing there. He said, I cried and it felt like I was losing my grip on reality. He said, I just lost my mom and now the boogeyman was real. Out of pure fear, I ended up forcing myself to stay awake all night and even called off work the next day. So he said this was the beginning of what would become his reality for the next 5 years. These constant nocturnal intrusions. He said, I went from being a young and confident 25-year-old who was afraid of to a man who was afraid of the dark and worse, afraid to fall asleep. And he didn't tell anyone what was happening.
Well, I was going to ask that. Did he seek assistance? Like whether it's a psychologist, a priest, I don't know.
He was just so worried about being ridiculed. He didn't want people to think he was crazy. Many such cases, right?
Of course.
People don't want to talk about this stuff. He finally decides to open up to his father, though. And not only does his father believe him, which is a huge weight off his shoulders and this incredible feeling of liberation.
Wait, does his father have a history of similar phenomena?
Worse, his father says, well, son, by the way, I'd never told anyone this, but when I was a young boy, I believe I was abducted by aliens. It's like that just comes out of nowhere. So, if you followed this show for a while, again, you would know the history of these things, that these so-called abductees, it seems to run in the family, whatever it is that's happening. And he said at the time, look, I didn't believe in God. I didn't really believe in anything. I would have been considered an atheist. He said I was good at showing up as a happy, charismatic guy everyone was expected to see, but he said deep down he was suffering. And the sleep paralysis, night terrors, obviously, it's taking your toll. You can't get a restful night's sleep. He was just getting completely destroyed by it. But around this time, he said there was a local MUFON meetup in St. Louis, where he lives in Missouri. And he and his dad, since they had opened up to each other about this, they said, well, why don't we go? Why don't we go check this out? And so they go to this MUFON. It wasn't really a conference. It was just like a little meeting that they have. And he said he was immediately blown away because whoever was speaking or whatever they heard at that meeting, it started to connect dots for him that he hadn't seen before. And both he and his dad were enthralled. He doesn't give details about what the info was, but they were kind of hooked. And he said it was through MUFON I was introduced to Reiki energy healing.
Uh-oh.
Aaron thinks he knows where this is going. This opened a new door that would ultimately lead to a much greater understanding of what was happening to me. He says a week later, he goes into the local, metaphysical bookstore. And he says, amazingly, they were offering Reiki sessions. And he's like, what are the odds? I'm like, dude, the odds are pretty high. Like, you go into any metaphysical bookstore, they're offering Reiki sessions. Anyway, it turns out the woman he was speaking to was the Reiki practitioner. And she takes one look at him and she says, you've got an entity on you. And it's very apparent. He's like, what are you talking about? An entity on me? What do you mean? She says, it's attached to you. There's an entity on you. He's like, how? What are you talking about? And he explains to her, she starts asking, like, tell me about your life. And he explains, well, my mother passed away. And then I went on this binge of 7 years of sex, drugs, and alcohol and everything else.
I'm surprised that he'd be so forward with that. But I suppose if you're at the end of your tether.
Guess he was desperate. And, this is the pattern.
Absolutely it
People go through a trauma. They're vulnerable, both emotionally but also energetically. And then especially the drugs and the alcohol. This is just asking for trouble. We've covered this topic for years. It's
like this outwards kind of comfort that people seek after they go through these experiences, but it leaves you very vulnerable.
And for these possessing entities, these attaching entities that many people are convinced are real, this is an open invitation. It opens up your energy field. This is what people explain. We've had this described by people with psychic abilities who have seen this occur, people that are drunk on alcohol. They literally have a hole in their, aura, in their whatever field it is. And so she explains to them, this is like a crack in the egg and something's gotten on you. So he's like, that's a good sales pitch. Let's go Reiki session. So he takes 3 sessions with this woman. And the first 2 were just like, she said, clearing blockages. But it was the third one where it got interesting because he said he laid down on the table. She starts doing her thing. And he said immediately there was this dense presence in the room. And he started feeling this horrible sensation in his sacral chakra region, just below his belly button. And she's hovering her hands over him. And he's like, I could feel something inside me trying to avoid her hands, like one of those alien face suckers. And he's like, holy crap, there's actually something inside of me. And it's like, trying to move around and get away from her. He says, I'll tell you, there's no stranger feeling than something swimming around inside of you trying to resist capture. He said she finally got a hold of it. And she's like, I don't know how she did it, whether there was emotion, but she's like, trying to pull it out of him. She starts pulling it out of him. He can't see anything, but he can feel it. He says, I don't know if my hips physically lifted off the table, but it felt like it. And there's this, And immediately he feels it leave his body. And he said, I gasped in shock. The entire room appeared lighter. And he says, I regained my composure and stared at this Reiki woman in disbelief. And she's like, oh, how do you feel? He said he couldn't say anything. He was just in shock. And she's like, okay, well, take your time. He said after a few moments, everything felt different. The room felt different. His body felt different. His mind felt different. He said it was like I was seeing everything for the first time. Like he would wiggle his fingers and he felt, oh, it's my body. I can feel my body again. He said it took me days of processing before I realized the gravity of the situation. I no longer knew who I was. He said I was finally understanding just how much this entity had been affecting my behavior and even my personality.
That's a good point, which I hadn't really considered. But like when we talk about spirit possession and attachment, it's almost like, because you get this sensation that it's like, well, your drinking and your errant ways is what is causing the behavior. And it's not to diminish responsibility of someone's, personal capabilities and what they should be doing. But in saying that, once something's on you, it also continues to push you to engage in these risk-taking behaviors and these unhealthy habits and behaviors.
And we all fall into patterns and habits quite easily. And
we're human beings. That's what we do.
Yeah, after enough time's passed, you start to think of those habits and patterns as you.
Yes.
That's something that you do. That's part of you. But sometimes these notions, these habits, these patterns, they're something external that's influencing you.
Very much
not
so.
necessarily the true you.
Well, I mean, it's like this concept in Buddhism, isn't it? It's not even like there's no ego. It's like you are a collection of like your karma and your thoughts and all that, and that's what's passing through each lifetime. And it's the same as this. It's like you're not the same person you were 10 years ago, let alone a year ago. So it's like these entities have the ability to influence that.
Well, he claims this was influencing him for 5 years.
Yeah.
And so he said, I haven't been in the driver's seat for that long. This thing's been silently influencing every poor decision I made. He said, down the rabbit hole I went.
Did she say what she did with it? Like, do they have like some type of Ghostbusters, like firehouse where they shove it into some vault or?
There was a guy walking past the window and she just went, threw it on this random guy walking past.
Brilliant.
Just got rid of it. So he said if the devil, excuse me.
Oh, what's that, Ben? Is it too dry in here yet again?
Oh my God, yeah.
I hate this office. I'm going to have to put on my glasses.
It's like the desert.
It's so dry.
Yeah, I adjusted the lights so we wouldn't get the reflection in your glasses.
Well, yeah, because like, as I was saying in the plus thing, it's so dry. It's just like, I need to wear blue light blocking glasses. It's freaking painful.
I think you look better. Like I said on the last show, there's this Clark Kent vibe going on. I like it.
Just makes me look like
you look way smarter. I think you've
oh, thank you, Ben. I appreciate
you've
that.
Gone up
that's
like
great.
10 IQ points.
Oh, just 10?
Mensa level now. You just tipped into Mensa level.
Yeah, I'm Sharon Stone level now. That's good.
So he realized, like, if the devil is real, if this, because the entity felt nefarious and evil, obviously, he said, I was now wondering what's on the other side of that? Like, what's the opposite of that? Because remember, he was a bit of an atheist. He didn't really believe in anything. And so he started to wonder as well, how many people in society have this kind of attachment?
Lots.
And so, yeah, since he finally felt like himself for the first time in years, this was the start of a serious path of self-discovery. And this is when the lucid dreaming really kicked into gear. And he said something interesting happened with his lucid dreams in this period. He stumbled upon this ability by accident, but he gained lucidity and the ability to control the dreams, especially in a sense of fast forwarding them and rewinding them and pausing them. He had total control of it, like it was a DVD or something. He said, I started an experiment. How much control did I have? And he had total control. He could just stop and do anything he wanted in these dreams, so totally lucid. But he said, I began noticing a trend in my dreams on the nights that I woke up paralyzed, because the sleep paralysis is still going on, even though this entity's gone. He said a strange out-of-place character would materialize in the distance. They would slowly walk towards him in his dream, and no matter how fast he ran, they would always catch him, and then he would wake up paralyzed with the sleep paralysis. He said it appeared they could shapeshift into anything and integrate themselves into my dream. It could be like an old woman or a strange man.
Well, that's what they do. They seem to mimic, whatever's in your mind.
Well, this is where this ability that he stumbled upon came in real handy. He said, while exploring this ability, I discovered I could wake myself up at any given moment. The very first time he did this, he was being chased by this tall, strange man in overalls, this typical pattern in his dreams. And he ran into a closet to hide, but he was discovered. And this, big man was trying to reach down and grab him. But because he was lucid, he snapped himself out of the dream. He claims when he woke up, he looked to the side of his bed and there's this shadow-like humanoid figure reaching down to get him. Now, he said when he woke up, obviously he was freaked out. He said this thing was startled as well.
Yeah, they're commonly shocked. It's like they don't think that we can detect them, that we can see them.
He said it had no visible facial features, but he could just feel it. It was like totally surprised. It aborted the mission, glided around the foot of his bed and disappeared.
Is there a second entity there? Or is that just the AI that created it?
That's just the AI.
It does that a lot. Have you noticed that? It does. Like if you ask the AI to put like a character or a figure, and it'll do two of them.
Yeah, you can tell it to remove it. It'll remove it. I should clarify, these images I'm using, unless I say they're from his book, they're just my images.
They're just
AI images. So this became his strategy. Like he would detect an infiltrator in his dream and then wake himself up. And he said one night he woke up to see a short, translucent being glowing with red veins and the head of a jack-o'-lantern standing on his dresser staring at him.
I like that he's just laughing at it. I guess that's the best way to deal with them.
He said, yeah, it was kind of funny because it was trying to intimidate him, but it was like a foot tall. So he just laughed at it.
Kick its face off.
And yeah, he just said, nice try. And it basically went, oh, and dematerialized like a curtain closing or something. But he said things were getting a little bit too close for comfort. So he started to wake himself up earlier and earlier every time he detected them. But these things were relentless. They weren't giving up. They were constantly doing this. His attackers, they started to adopt this new strategy. So they started to show up as his family members in the dream.
Yeah, I was expecting this.
So his mother, he said he was fooled. It was his mother, and it kind of transformed into something hideous, and he went through sleep paralysis. Sometimes they would just be cloaked, so entirely invisible, and he'd have to rely on feel to feel them in the dream. Sometimes they would show up as animals. Once there was a cat, he goes to pat the cat, transforms into a demon. Eventually, they just started to appear as normal, everyday objects in the dream. Like a chair he would go to sit on is some kind of creature.
Look, I'm not one to talk, but you're encountering what appears to be demonic entities, and then you make a career out of it?
Yeah. And also, I don't know if this lady did her job. I don't know if this Reiki practitioner got them all.
That's the thing. I'm like, if you got one, is there more?
Like, was she having a discount day and she was just doing one entity? Maybe there was like 1,000 more that she missed. So he discusses this, this progress through this process of dealing with these things. He talks about loosh farming.
What's loosh farming?
Remember Raymond Moody spoke about the loosh farmers?
Oh, yes.
It was the idea that these entities in other dimensions, they're essentially feeding off our emotions.
Yep.
So particularly negative emotions. So they're stirring up, hate and fear and distress and chaos.
I don't really know how a jack-o'-lantern little 1-foot creature, though, will really do that. It's more of a surprise. But maybe they feed off that as well.
Dude, that thing would be freaky.
Of course it would be.
What if it was like a succubus or something?
I have this feeling, I look around, like, well, no one's going to see.
When in Rome. When in Rome. I shouldn't joke about that, actually.
Why?
Because he had absolutely brutal.
Yeah, that's true.
Not succubus encounter, but incubus encounter.
Oh.
So yeah, it basically rolled him over, had its way with him, and then it came back for seconds. It's brutal. I'm not going to mention it. I'll leave it in the book for you to discover. It's pretty awful. He claimed these entities started interfering with his everyday real life relationships as well. He says, for example, he was attracted to women in his life who were clearly not good for him at all. And the connection between them was chaotic and,
booze hags. If you're in that state, you go to bars, you're hanging out with booze hags.
Just, these disgusting cougars, these fat cougars. He was convinced he was falling in love with them, but they were just horrible. And so the dynamic of the relationship would be what you would expect these entities to want to feed on, which would be endless
and
arguments.
Drama. Yep.
constant drama, yes, arguments, chaos. And he kind
Sadness.
of woke up to that as well. And he starts to talk about how these entities look for entries into the base chakra as well. So a lot of, any kind of sexual energy, any kind of sexual temptations, where he discovered that's one of the main portals for these things to take over. So he says, next time you wake up at 3 a.m. and feel the uncontrollable urge to masturbate, there's a likely chance that an artificial feeling has been induced by a spirit looking to hitchhike a ride. So, yeah, good advice, good advice. Then we get to chapter 3, Mars recruitment. Now, it's not what you think, because we
you
covered
just said
recently.
super soldiers, so I'm like,
we covered recently, like these guys who claim the 21 and back program. They claim they get recruited to this secret space program where they go to Mars. Do they go? I can never work it out.
I can never understand it.
They get split into a clone. They get sent to Mars,
but then their consciousness gets sent, and then it's sent back in time.
They get sent back in time, and it's just so convoluted,
it's also tiresome
and ridiculous. But that's not what he's talking about. He introduces this guy named Larry. And all of this took place in 2016, 2017. He said for 15 years he worked in this commercial construction company. And this guy Larry was one of his co-workers. He was older than Tyler, but they got on well and they didn't live too far away from each other. So they used to carpool every morning. So you can imagine if you carpool with someone, you get to know them.
Build up a rapport with them.
Yeah, you become friends. And their conversations were pretty surface level. He liked to talk about sports ball, and that's basically it. He said, I don't recall him ever mentioning anything out of the ordinary. He did mention on one occasion that there was some kind of tunnel system under St. Louis, but he's like, it's just some kind of fun rumor. He said, even though he was much older than me, we still had a pretty deep connection. And at work, would always make jokes and prank each other. He was a friend. And he said, my friendship with Larry was the only reason I didn't write him off as a crazy person like everyone else when the following events occurred. So what happened to Larry? Well, one day at the office, this SUV full of, this blacked out SUV full of all these like policemen and SWAT type guys pulls up and drags Larry away into the van and drives away.
Dealing drugs or something?
Nobody knows. And everyone's like, what happened to Larry? And I don't know, these like FBI looking guys came and got him. We haven't heard anything from him. They went to management. Manager's like, we can't track him down. We haven't heard from him. He's not answering any communications. His phone's off. He's just gone. And so weeks passed with this friend of his from work just vanishing, like the feds just grabbed him. About a month later, Larry appears on Facebook. And he starts posting on this account that had been inactive since he had disappeared. But his posts are now completely unhinged. And Tyler's got some direct quotes from Larry's Facebook posts. One was, Donald Trump and the Russians are kafefi together on the cyber hacking of the election. On one occasion, he posted a meme of a man in a coffin that said, the face you make when you testify against the Clintons. Classic, right? In another post, he claimed Princess Diana is alive and living anonymously. They used clones to act out the tragedy.
Oh, he's gone off the deep end into all those conspiracies.
Yeah, he's taken too many Q pills.
Yeah.
Got an image of him there. There's Larry on the screen there. The elitists don't want you to know. They want war and chaos.
Well, that's true.
So yeah, I guess that's a pretty normal one. He really lost people, Tyler said, when he started making claims he was going to Mars. Over the course of the next few months, he continued to make posts such as, time to get to Mars. I can't wait to get off this rock, and I'm ready for Mars. Me and Andy are going to rule the planet. So Andy was like some policeman friend of his. I don't know if Andy was in on it. And so Tyler's like, yeah, at this point, I was questioning his sanity. He became a daily conversation piece at work. Everyone had labeled him nuts. Now, Tyler didn't want to get involved because, he was friends with the guy, and he didn't reach out because he's like, it's been like over a month since I last spoke to him. I don't even know what to say to him. Anyway, it was one Saturday morning, and Tyler said he was lying in bed watching a video, and he thought to himself, for some reason, he doesn't know where this thought came from, I should take my dog outside and go for a walk in the park this morning. And it's something he had never done because he usually takes his dog around the neighborhood. Anyway, he decided he would go to Jefferson Barracks Park, which happens to be right next to this abandoned military base. He says this may be like a strange place to walk my dog, but he said, I grew up spending time there and it always felt like home. So he gets dressed, he gets the dog ready, and they head out the door. They drive to the park, and he just picks a random parking spot in the park. And before he gets out of his car, he looks to his right, and there's a truck parked there with Larry sitting in it.
That's a weird coincidence.
Yeah, he's parked right next to Crazy Larry. And he looks over and he's like, Larry, is that you? And Larry just says, you showed up. It's like, what do you mean I showed up? Larry says, you don't think you ended up here by accident, do you? Now, obviously, Tyler's confused at this point, and they get out of their vehicle. They start talking, and he's like, what are you talking about? Why did you say that? He said, I knew you'd be here this morning. But how? I didn't even know I was coming here until about 30 minutes ago. It just randomly popped in my head. Larry changes the subject immediately. He's in a rush. He's paranoid. He's looking around. He says he's got to be careful because he's being followed by federal agents. He pointed to a tree with a man standing next to it who bent over doing stretches. And Larry's like, you see that guy over there? He's one of them. He's been following me. He's listening to us right now. Tyler looks over and he swears the guy reaches up and adjusts an earpiece, like an FBI earpiece.
But this sounds like, what's the term for it? Gang stalking.
Yeah, like paranoid delusions. Yeah. He says, Larry's like, he's only there as a scare tactic, though. If they really wanted to listen to us, they'd have the technology to do it from space using satellites. And Tyler's like, okay, Larry, why were you escorted off the job site? What happened? And he admits he was arrested for threatening to behead Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton.
That will do it.
Because they were pedophiles, he said. And he pulled out a newspaper article that showed Tyler about him. And Tyler says, I tried to include it in the book, but I couldn't find it again.
How did he get out of jail?
I don't know. I guess maybe they decided it wasn't a credible threat and he got a warning or a fine or something. I don't know. He began sharing things with Tyler that just seemed completely outlandish. He said, he told me Donald Trump carries the Christ consciousness and is here to save the world. Obama is the Antichrist. Hillary Clinton is a murderer and will be arrested and publicly executed. He explained to me who the deep state were and went on about the bad actors and pedophilia within the government. He told me about advanced technologies, time travel, and many other things. He said it was an information overload and it was hard to retain everything. I was just there to walk my dog. So he said he told me he wasn't sure how it was happening, but there were voices in his head telling him to do these things. He claims he just suddenly knew things, but didn't know how he knew them. So I'm listening to this part of the story, and I'm thinking, okay, so surely Tyler's going to put two and two together here. He's just opened the book with his personal experience. He's learnt how he had possibly some kind of spirit attachment that was driving his thinking and his behavior for a number of years, that he really wasn't acting like himself. He was going a bit nutty. And along comes Larry with potentially the same problem, right? Maybe he's got an attachment as well. Maybe something's on him. He's taken too many Q pills.
But then, the mind begins to wander. I just saw the other day there was an article suggesting that scientists have developed a technology that will allow you to beam an audio signal into one person's head in the middle of a room. Like in a crowded room, you can beam an audio signal into it. You can like get one person to only be able to hear that.
That's so funny that you would say that, because that's totally what these guys on their podcast would say. It's like,
well, the only reason why I say that is because I wonder now if, I'm not saying MK Ultra, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if there are, military testing going on. They don't care about it being civilians.
Well, I'm kind of setting it up as in, it's a potential that this guy has the same kind of affliction. And he asked the question earlier, how many people in society have these kind of attachments, and to what ends do these entities manipulate people?
Well, he also could be suffering from schizophrenia.
Well, what is schizophrenia? Where does it come from? What's the origin? Is it purely the brain malfunctioning, or is there something else behind it? I thought these were questions that he was going to tackle. I'm all for it. And I turned the page and he's like, it wasn't until almost a year later that I learned about voice-to-skull technology.
Well, there you go.
Exactly what you're talking about.
Coincidentally, because I only saw the article the other day. And I was like, oh, interesting. I'm not surprised.
I saw something pop up on Twitter this morning that was the same thing.
Yeah.
He said it was a psychoelectric weapon that was developed in 1974 by Dr. Joseph Sharp, a device that allows silent hypnosis to be transmitted using a voice frequency modulator to generate a voice which is aimed at the target. This is a technology that the US Army has overtly used as a crowd control technology, but covertly it's used by intelligence agencies in whatever capacity necessary. In other words, making this guy lose it. Voice-to-skull technology.
It's a Q-beam.
So he's like, I'm convinced Larry, was suffering from a directed Q-beam right to the cranium. But what about Mars? Well, to top it all off, he nonchalantly mentioned he had been recruited to go to Mars to live out the rest of his life.
By whom?
Apparently, he was approached after his arrest and given the opportunity to help preserve the future of humanity by colonizing Mars. Larry reveals that the reason he's meeting Tyler in the park today, and remember, Tyler just went there randomly. Larry says he's been given an order by the voices in his head to invite Tyler to join him on Mars. And so Tyler's like, what? Are you serious? Who gave you the order? Why me? I can't tell you who and I don't know why, but you're the only person they'll let me talk to. He says, I'm going to need more than that. If you can't tell me who, I'm definitely not going to Mars. He said this was the first of many attempts at convincing me to go with him to Mars. I don't know who he was talking to or why he believed what he was told, but he was convinced he was actually going. He really wanted me to go with him, Tyler said. Now, he notes at this point, he learns that Larry had lost his job. His wife had left him, filed for divorce, restraining order.
Yeah, the guy's having a terrible breakdown.
His kids didn't want to have anything to do with him. He couldn't see them. He is homeless, living in his truck. He believed all of this was caused by them. Now, who them is?
The reality is, even though I mentioned that technology, it's probably more likely the guy is just suffering from schizophrenia.
Yeah, some kind of paranoid delusions, right? Anyway, Tyler says the following Monday after work, he pulled up to his house and he sees Larry parked out the front in his truck. And he's like, oh God, what is this? He's, Larry, what are you doing here? I figured I would come by and see if you wanted to talk, Larry said.
No, I'm good.
So instead of inviting him inside, they go around the back and he sits down in the backyard, has a chat with him. Immediately, he's like, are you ready to go to Mars? Have you decided? Have you got things packed? Like, we're going to get ready. We're going to leave on Labor Day. He starts unloading about Mars on him. He talks about what he needs to pack, the photographs to remember his family. He's told the world is going to end on Labor Day of 2017 and only the chosen people are going to Mars. And they told him on Mars he could have all the women and sex that he wanted to preserve the human race.
Right.
I love it.
Of course they did.
There's like human breeding farms on Mars. Like not only do you get to get off this rock, you get a harem on Mars. You can repopulate the Earth. Apparently brothels are commonplace in these programs as well for the forced breeding program. Nevertheless, it was hard to take him seriously, Tyler said, but he said everything with a straight face. He clearly wasn't joking. He clearly believed what he was saying. And Tyler's like, I don't want to push this guy to the limit.
Well, you don't know what he's capable of if he's unwell.
Yeah. So Tyler was just like, Larry, I can't go, bro. Like, I can't go to Mars. I got stuff to do.
Look, I'm perhaps preempting this, but the kicker will be is if the guy just disappeared off the face of the earth.
Well, there's twists in this story. He says, Larry, how are you getting to Mars anyway? He says, I don't know. They haven't told me. How do you know that you're even really going? I mean, why do you believe these people? I have my reasons. He goes on to explain he was made aware of a advanced propulsion craft that can get there in 30 minutes.
30 minutes? Isn't like 3 months or something with our current rocket technology?
Yeah, but this is an advanced propulsion craft. Apparently, the government and militaries have been sitting on this for decades. He told him that some of the stars in the night sky are actually parked ships. And he says, if you get a strong enough laser, you point it at them and they will move. And then Larry reaches into his bag and he pulls out this laser, like one of those ones
Like a torch.
that's banned in every country except Saudi Arabia or something. And it's like this big, like 10 billion lumens laser. And he just goes, look at this. And it's like this giant lightsaber. And what's weird in this moment is Tyler said his dogs were going bananas and they were just acting out of character, like barking at something. And Tyler has a look outside and he sees this blacked out van just driving down his street in the neighborhood. And he starts watching it. The dogs are barking at it every time it goes past. And then he watches as it's doing laps. This blacked out van is doing laps of the neighborhood. And he said, I became more and more intrigued by the situation and this information Larry was sharing with me. He eventually asked Larry to leave, but he's like, the thing with the van, what if Larry's telling the truth? This is a little weird.
But there's a problem with this kind of stuff that when you're so caught up in the madness, it's like you start to interpret natural things as being something to be concerned about. So is it that it just happened to be a van driving outside and he's just jumped to these conclusions?
Just someone in a blacked out van just doing laps of the neighborhood. Totally normal.
But it could be though. It could be an electrician. It could be a plumber. It could be someone looking for a house.
Could be a burglar.
Could be a burglar. Exactly.
To take you to Mars.
Not to take you to Mars.
So he said they started texting frequently and he actually becomes friends with Larry again. Like they start talking almost every day. He said, as we started to increase our communications, he started to notice a ton of black vehicles and even black helicopters that would be around whenever they met. He shared quite a bit of mind-blowing information with me. So Larry tells him about MK Ultra. He claims that all these cell phones are controlled by MK Ultra and anyone can watch you at all times. He explains that there's two different timelines existing simultaneously. And there's a constant battle between the forces to keep one timeline on top. And he says the best way you can tell of what's going on the other timeline is through sports video games. And I was like, what? And he claims, how like Madden and the NBA games, they have like, I don't know if they vote for it, but they decide who's on the cover of the latest game. And here's an example. This is the NHL 2017 game. There's a vote for which player's on the cover. And Larry explains that the player on the alternate cover, it's not random. He says it's actually a player from the team that won the Stanley Cup on the other timeline.
What?
That's how you know. I think this is ingenious. What better way to monitor the other timeline than NBA 2K and FIFA and all these sports games? And it makes total sense that the powers that be would have publicly display it like that. He claimed that cloning is not only possible, but occurring on a mass basis. Most celebrities, musicians, and politicians have been replaced by clones. And Tyler's like, well, what happened to the originals? He says they're either disposed of or living in underground cities.
Okay, let's just stop for a second.
It gets better from here. It gets more crazy.
Why would you bother cloning someone if you're just going to dispose of them? Like, it sounds like it's like a lot of effort for no purpose.
Yeah, why wouldn't you just, bribe or keep the original politician?
Or do what they do, like blackmail them.
Because you can remote control the clone and it also doubles as a sex slave.
Is that all thrown in? Is that been said as well?
It's implied.
Yeah, it is implied.
On Saturday evening, he said, in June 2017, I received a phone call from Larry asking me to meet him under the St. Francis Bridge, which is about an hour drive from my house. He said he told me there was a woman there who was part of a secret government time travel organization that had been in operation since the 90s.
So I hope he doesn't go.
Larry said she was disguised as a homeless woman living under the bridge.
So without knowing this guy at all, and I feel really bad for him that his mum died, but I'm like, you've had this Reiki, but are you not over the trauma?
No, to Tyler's credit, he doesn't go.
Okay.
He said he wanted me to meet with her so she could give us instructions on how we were getting to Mars.
Just
Apparently,
throw a cat at you.
apparently the advanced propulsion ships, they're old hat now. Now they use jump rooms, which gets you to Mars instantly via teleportation.
Very Andrew Basiago.
Tyler, this is my favorite part of my favorite quote. Tyler says, quote, "Something was off about the whole situation," end quote. You think, buddy?
Probably.
Tyler, you think there was something off? So after multiple failed attempts at coercing me into coming to the bridge, Larry asked if I'd be willing to talk with one of these time travelers over the phone. Okay. And so Tyler's like, fine, okay, but they've got to call me. I'm not going to call some random person. They've got to call me. And Larry says, great. The most important thing, though, is when you speak to this person, they're going to call you soon. What you have to say, I'm inviting you to the Church of Scientology.
Okay.
And
it's like
Tyler,
a code phrase.
Yeah. And Tyler's like, what? And he says, that's the code phrase. I want you to come to the Church of Scientology. And Tyler's like, okay. A few hours later, he checked his phone during his lunch break at work. He's got a friend request from this beautiful woman on Facebook, and she's DMing him. And she's also liked all his posts. She says, "Hi, Tyler. I'm Larry's friend. Nice to meet you." And he starts chatting back and forth with this woman. He just cuts to the chase. He says, "Look, Larry told me you're a time traveler. Is that true?" And as expected, she played dumb. And eventually...
Probably because she's like, what the hell's going on?
The small talk didn't amount to anything and the conversation ended. Later that night, Larry calls him. And Larry's like, did you speak to her? And he's like, yeah, but she wouldn't say anything. He's like, did you use the code word? He's like, no, I didn't use the code word. It was weird. Something didn't feel right. He's like, I told you. She won't tell you anything unless you invite her to the Church of Scientology. That's the code word. Larry, I'm not getting involved in something I don't understand. I'm sorry. Well, you've got a small window if you change your mind, he says. Well, she said she and I messaged back and forth a few days, and it basically didn't go anywhere. Eventually, she deleted her account, and that was it. She basically vanished. And this...
Is she even real?
Well, it's obviously Larry, right? This triggered something in Larry. Next time he saw Tyler, he's like, who are you really? Who are you working for?
Yeah.
What's your motivation? What are you getting out of this?
I mean, it's getting dangerous now.
Like really getting into him. And Tyler's like, what are you talking about, man? We're friends from work. He says, something's fishy here. You've been so cooperative this whole time. What's going on? Who are you working for? So he answered him honestly over and over. Eventually, Larry backs down. But as Labor Day approached, Larry ramped up his efforts like every day. Bro, you got to come to Mars. Are you ready? You make your decision. You got to come to Mars with me. Did you pack your bag yet? Are you ready? Labor Day comes. This was the day that Larry was going to Mars. And Labor Day goes. And
so does Larry?
Larry's still there.
Yeah.
He messages him the following Thursday with this really strange message. Larry says, I'm sorry to hear about your foot, but don't worry, it's not broken. It's just a sprain. And Tyler replies and is like, what are you talking about? My foot's fine. What's going on, Larry? He says, oh, maybe it was a premonition, but that would be a good excuse to leave work. And remember, the ship for Mars leaves on Saturday. Hey, Tyler's like, this is just nuts. Like, okay, whatever, Larry. And he just goes to work. That day at work, the operator on the job was unloading 39-foot-long steel railroad tracks from a delivery truck. The guy was inexperienced and dropped the load. The railroad track rolled off the forks and smashed Tyler's foot against the concrete sidewalk. And he thought surely his foot was broken. Everyone around him rolled the steel track off his foot. But to their amazement, his foot wasn't broken. It was only sprained. It was a miracle, he said. And it wasn't until later in the day, he's like, holy shit, Larry's schizo message came true.
These entities seem to be able to display precognitive abilities as well. So if he's got something attached to him.
I thought it was the voice-to-skull technology.
Well, I mean, I'm not making any definite conclusions.
Yeah, well, I get what you're saying. Yeah, that's a really good insight, actually, because, yeah, those lower-level entities do seem to have some ability to look a little bit into the future. So he calls Larry. He's like, what the hell, dude? How did you know it was going to happen to me? What was going on? And Larry's like, playing coy. Says, what happened? This 1,500-foot steel railroad track crushed my foot. I told you it was probably just a premonition. Are you okay? He's like, yeah, just a mild sprain, just like you said, Larry. What's going on? They went back and forth, and Larry just started talking about Mars again. Anyway, the next day he got home from work. He noticed his dog was outside. He usually, locks his dog up in the house. And he walks into his house. Larry is on his couch. Cheetos, Cheeto
and
dust.
now is time to move.
He's like, Larry, what the F are you doing in my house? What's going on? Where's your truck? What are you doing here? How did you even get in? Larry's like, I was being followed and they tracked my vehicle, so I parked it at Walmart and then I walked here. So how did you get in? The back door was open. So Larry's just let himself in. He's like, oh, by the way, I had a shower. I hope you don't mind, and ate some food. So they have this big argument, and Tyler's like, look, dude, I'm going to drive you to your truck, and this can't happen again. And Larry's like, okay. So they get in the truck. They drive. Tyler drives him to, it was Best Buy where he parked his truck. On the way, Larry asked him one last time about coming to Mars. And Tyler said in his mind, he's like, there's no trip to Mars, you lunatic. Leave me alone. You're a crazy person. But out loud, he just says, I don't think I can do it, Larry. I've got a lot going on. But best of luck. Hope you have a good trip. And as Larry gets into his truck, he pulls out and he says, see you on the other side, and drives off. And he's like, what's Larry going to come up with next? So the question is, what happened to Larry?
Well, this is the question. Did he just not talk to him after this? Did he just disappear?
Did he get his harem on Mars? Is he banging a 10 out of 10 green-skinned Martian chick under one of Elon's secret domes?
I doubt it.
Well, he says 7 years have gone by and I still have not heard from Larry. I've tried to track him down, even had some old friends and co-workers try and locate him with no success. Larry has dropped off the face of the earth. He says he isn't registered at any prisons. He doesn't appear in any of the missing person records. There isn't an obituary for him. He's missing. He's gone. He said, I would occasionally check his Facebook page to see if he was recently active. He said, this is when I went back through his feed and took screenshots of some of his old posts on Mars. His final post on social media before disappearing was that he was listening to Metallica's song, I Disappear. How fitting, he says. Shortly after my time with Larry, my awakening was fully underway. Tyler said I stumbled across my first secret space program testimony, and it blew my mind. He said it sent me down a rabbit hole that I'm still not out of. So he talks about discovering Laura Eisenhower.
Oh, dear.
He becomes convinced there's a high possibility that what Larry was saying is true. And he is banging a 10 out of 10 green-skinned Martian chick in his harem on Mars. So there's kind of a hilarious update to this. I wonder, did I include? No, I didn't include a screenshot of it because I kind of want to give you a screenshot because he's finished
because the picture is worth 1,000 words.
He's finished this chapter, right? And you turn the page and there's like an update, which has clearly been added after the book was published. And the update is this.
In fall of 2024, I received a Facebook request from a familiar face. It was Larry. After 7 years of being missing, Larry has popped back up on the grid. I've been hesitant to reconnect and have not engaged in communication with him yet. Any further developments will be documented for book 2. Jesus. Sorry.
Book 2. Larry's adventures on Mars.
See, this is the danger of this kind of stuff. Like, naturally, this type of phenomena, whether it's spirit attachment, whatever it is, it attracts more of this madness into your life. And I don't know what's going on with this guy. It suggests to me, though, like, without being able to diagnose him, it sounds like he's suffering from schizophrenia. And he's just dropped off. But to fall into, you start listening to Laura Eisenhower and then actually go, well, maybe he did go to Mars. I'm like, no, you need to have some rationality.
And this is why I was so bamboozled with the start of the book, with the understanding that he was being influenced by something, that his thoughts weren't rational and he wasn't himself. And yet in the space of, this a few years with this relationship he has with this guy that is clearly bonkers, Tyler is drinking the Kool-Aid. Tyler seems to be losing his rationality and losing sight of this possibility that he's not thinking clearly, that he's being led astray by some of this information, and how can he tell that any of this is true? Well, he starts to explore this and dig deeper into the rabbit hole, as he pointed out.
But it's not a rabbit hole, it's quicksand. Because the more that you go into it and the more you move around, the more you get sucked down into it, and it's difficult to climb out.
Well, he discovered the inner earth stuff online, and he started researching that, reading every schizo account about journeys to inner earth and the people that live under the earth in hidden civilizations. So he read that to make contact with the inner earthers, it's best to be vegetarian. So he becomes vegetarian. And for almost a month, every night before bed, he said, I would sit in meditation trying to communicate with someone from inner earth.
Oh, no.
He said, I really had no idea what I was doing, but I was taking it very seriously. And he'd go into this deep meditation and try and connect. He would visualize this cable going out and connecting with a being from inner earth. Anyway, one particular evening, he said he fell asleep during his meditation, and hours pass before a text message on his phone comes through from an unknown number.
Is it Larry?
No, I wish it was Larry. The message just says, "Are you ready to meet us?" ? And he's like, I don't know who this is, but there was an inner knowing that he should answer. And he's like, of course. He replies. Immediately, a message comes back. Come to your back door. Now, he said, I should note he was sleeping in the basement at the time, and there was a back door from the basement room directly to the backyard. So he doesn't waste any time. He gets up and he walks to the back door and opens it. And he says he was expecting to see a UFO or something, but there's nothing. There's nothing in the backyard. He's like, okay, cool prank, whoever that was. Turns around to go back inside, and he sees this strange white apparition now in his bedroom, shimmering and starting to form at the foot of his bed. It's kind of phasing into the basement. He said this scared the crap out of me, and I literally stopped in my tracks. Now, he said he was kind of frozen, but not like a full paralysis. He was just shocked. He said, as I stood there motionless, I watched this being slowly phase into my reality, becoming clearer and clearer. Before my eyes, a radiant, tall blonde woman emerged. Her translucent form was only visible from the waist up. She wore a white robe with a gold lining over a royal blue undergarment. Around her neck was a golden pendant, fitting the description of many of the inner earth beings I'd seen depicted online. Now, this next image is included by Tyler, so I don't know if he drew this or if this is meant to be him. Let me put it on the screen. Now,
what's with the crystals in the background?
I don't know. If I was going to meet this hot woman wearing her blue undergarments from the inner earth, I would not be wearing my gym shorts and my baseball cap turned backwards.
Wait, to be fair, he was just sitting in his room or in his basement, although it's ironic that he's in his basement, and just minding his own business. So, you're not prepared to go and be formally dressed to meet someone.
At least take your cap off.
I think that's kind of immaterial in this.
I would feel so underdressed if this hot inner earth princess appeared in my bedroom.
But what happened?
Well, he says suddenly he's overwhelmed by this sensation. She starts speaking to him telepathically. He said it was like a complete download. It wasn't like just speech in his head. And he said it was an amazing feeling. Everything about her presence was benevolent. He said she locked eyes with me and relayed this message in this kind of beautiful, honeyed voice. She told him, "You're not ready yet." Now, he said what came in this entire download with that sentence would take me days to unpack. But seconds after this exchange, he said she just kind of phased away and he was free to move again. He goes back into his room. The first thing he does is like, I've got proof of this. So he goes to check the text messages on his phone. The messages are gone.
See, I'm concerned, and not casting any aspersions either, but to start leaning into these sorts of theories, but then also getting these ideas that you're seeing figures and that you're receiving text messages that you no longer have any evidence of afterwards. I'm worried that he's undergone some type of severe psychotic break, like the trauma of his mother, and it can linger, like can last a long time. It's sent him down this path of, and I'm not saying that it has, but I'm just saying that maybe this is one possibility here, that what he's interpreting is actually due to his trauma.
Yes, but he saw that Reiki chick 3 times.
So? Or you think that like he probably caught more creatures? Like as I asked,
she
the
probably
woman
gave him more.
Didn't have like I'm sure there's no autoclave in the background that's like incinerating the creatures. It's like they're probably all over her. And she's like, oh, don't worry, I can remove it for you. And next second
You're totally right. That's the irony, is the Reiki practitioner has 10 billion more entities on her. Yeah. And when he goes for a treatment, she removed one in exchange for 1,000 more. So that's one possibility. And the message, like the download, I do like his interpretation of it, because he said it made him realize he was so obsessed with making contact with an entity that he was neglecting everything else in his life, everything important.
Absolutely.
So the outcome of it is very positive.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
He gets back on track and he says, look, I'm not going to, be totally attached to this. It's become an obsession and it's just kind of ruining my life. So he lets it go. Great outcome. He said, well, actually, I'm going to skip ahead in the story, because by this point, he describes like leaving his regular construction job, which he said was really liberating. He starts this podcast with Aaron, and it seems like it's going really well for them. It's quite successful. They're running their own conference, for example. So doing quite well. And he said back in 2021, he was put in contact with a man who was coming forward as a whistleblower. And he claimed to have worked for one of these secret programs. Now, this chapter is entitled Meeting My Handler, which will give you a clue as to what occurs. He claimed to be part of a 12-man team working on a classified project for the US Navy. Allegedly, his team was tasked with clearing out the global subterranean tunnel network and rescuing trafficked children in underground bases. Some of his claims included occasional off-planet assignments to the moon and Mars. I wonder if he knows Larry. Maybe they're pals. He said, as a podcast host, I was eager to hear him out for a potential interview. And fair enough. Like, you run a podcast. We talk about crazy stuff all the time. It's good. It's good show fodder, right? He told me of an ongoing military effort to exterminate an extraterrestrial presence that's been under the earth for centuries. Based. Just blow them up. He knew which groups were involved, where the bases were located, and how to access them. He had inside knowledge of things very few should know about and details I had never heard. He also had remote viewing skills. What convinced Tyler about this guy's credibility? And he calls him John. I'll put him on the screen here. Obviously, that's not him. That's just AI. But John knew things about Tyler that he couldn't possibly have known unless he did have some kind of ability or he had access to
Are you kidding?
government
It's
technology.
so easy to go to a data broker and get huge amounts of, as much over the years as I've tried to protect our identities, we've had lunatics like look into our histories, try to contact us. Like, this is par for the course when you're a podcast host in this genre.
Yeah, you're right. But this was stuff that really was personal, like missing time experiences when he was 8 years old that he hadn't told anyone.
Okay, that's a little bit different.
He claims he was abducted at one point, which is a whole other chapter. And this guy knew all about it, apparently. And so he was really convinced. And you got to think, okay, this guy's probably a confidence man, probably very good at what he does. But Tyler was convinced that this guy was legit.
Well, the only thing is, though, has he, if you're doing a podcast and you're sharing details about your own life, has he hinted to that kind of stuff? So this guy's just run with it.
Exactly. Well, he starts talking to this guy regularly. They have conversations that will last for hours. So they become friends. And in one of the many conversations, Tyler ran something by him that had happened shortly before they met, where he woke up to this clear voice in his head. Tyler hears this voice saying, 92720, write this down. 92720, write this down. So he mentions it to this guy, his new friend, John.
Zip code?
His best guess was it was a date, the 27th of the 9th. And he tells John's like, it's actually 19720 and it's your clone ID number, 19720. And Tyler's like, wait, I have a clone? You have 3 clones, but you're not supposed to know that. And you actually met one of them in Sedona. It's like, what are you talking about? I met one of my clones. It was a girl. You wouldn't have recognized her. Not all clones have the same bodies. He's like, I did meet a girl in Sedona. That's weird. Another thing he knew. He explains that a clone doesn't technically have to be the exact copy of your physical vessel. Tyler pressed him for more information, but he wouldn't elaborate because John had already shared too much.
Does he say whether he's physically met this man or is it all online?
It's all online. It's
Okay.
just like video chat.
And recall that he previously received messages from the underground people telling him to come out the back of his basement, and then those messages were then gone. Is this all some type of psychotic experience?
Possibly. That's
I'm not saying it is. I'm just questioning it.
on another podcast, and that would be their conclusion. But this is Mysterious Universe. So all possibilities are still open.
But come on, let's just, possibilities open, but let's just be rational about this for a second. So you've happened to undergo all these weird experiences, and you just happen to, and I know, like I've spoken about stuff over the years. I've had a lot of weird experiences. I don't have any clones out there, but this is the thing, right? You start crossing into this super soldier kind of world where it's just too batshit. It's like, come on, mate. So you've had these experiences with attachment, okay, maybe, but then all of a sudden you're contacted by a handler who's telling you about your female clones.
Well,
I'm too cynical, I know, but I mean, it's a lot to swallow.
don't you want to hear what this insider has to say? The guy that has been single-handedly rescuing the children stuck in the underground bases?
I am intrigued.
He said that there's doppelgängers. We all have doppelgängers, but they live in other countries, and there's a bureaucratic system to make sure that you never run into your doppelganger.
Where did we hear this only recently?
This is Dick Sutphin stuff,
That's
man.
it.
Dick Sutphin said that your soul is kind of split into different bodies.
That's
so there's
right.
like a version of you living in Idaho somewhere, and you'll never meet them. If you do, it's like awkward. He also knew about 2 separate abductions I had experienced, one at age 5 and 13. So the guy, he's convinced that this guy is legit. He said, as I mentioned, our phone calls would last for hours. By now, we were talking daily. He said, John, though, would often disappear for days, sometimes weeks at a time, claiming to be on a job. When he resurfaced, he would fill me in on what little details he could. One day, he threw me a curveball, and he asked if I would like to join the program. Now, Tyler's like, what, me? The program? Yeah, right. No, I'm serious. If the opportunity presented itself, would you consider joining our program?
Previously, he was also asked to go to Mars.
Yeah. He's like, why are you recruiting me? Well, what if I was? What would you say? He's like, I'd need more information. What I know about these programs, it always ends up bad. You end up on Mars fighting a giant bug creature, and you come back as a clone body. It's like, I don't want any of that. Fair point. I'm just laying this on the table. If you want to take it further, we can. He then proceeded to ask me a series of unrelated questions, the last one being clearly the most significant. What's the one thing you've wanted more than anything in life? And Tyler's like, I want to fall in love. I want to meet my soulmate. He's like, are you sure? He's like, yeah, I'm sure. Why? He's like, then you'll be tested. Watch out in the coming days. Tyler's like, all right. In the coming days, he meets a random Australian chick on Facebook. Instantly, they hit it off. Soulmates, twin flames, Aaron. Everything they say to each other, it's like, where have you been? You're my soulmate. They start dating online, remotely. He says, by Christmas Day 2021, I was in love.
Is Larry, John, and this chick all the same dude?
No, he actually comes to Australia to meet her. She's real.
Okay.
But
Is it Larry in a dress?
She claims, like in some of their early meetings, she claims she was here in Australia. She lives in Brisbane. And she was going to the petrol station, and some random guy walked past her and gave her a token. And he's just kind of walked off and said, have a nice day. And she looked in her hand, and it was an Air Force token. And he said,
An American Air Force token?
yeah. She said when she looked in this stranger's eyes, she said to Tyler, I'll never forget the eyes. She says, it was you. They were your eyes. And so this confirmed the doppelganger.
Australian clone.
The clone doppelganger thing that John had been explaining. But she doesn't trust John. She thinks John is dodge. So eventually he received a phone call one evening from John, and he didn't seem like himself. He was completely distressed. He said he had just come back from a mission where he had infiltrated some underground bases, which happened to be in Tyler's hometown, St. Louis. And he witnessed this horrible thing under the tunnels where he saw these kids that had been like hybridized, and there were these weird aliens, and he had to put down some of the
none of
unfortunates. And this is what Tyler's being told, that John had just come back from his Black Ops thing. they entered the tunnels through the St. Louis Rams football team's old stadium. According to him, there was a battle between his team and the patrolling hybrids, and his Black Ops team shot and killed all the hybrids.
So you know what this sounds like? Phil Schneider's story.
Yeah. It sounds like gold. It sounds like Mysterious Universe gold for me on Thursday evening when I'm reading it. He says, my girlfriend, so Tyler gets a call from his girlfriend that morning. And she's like, honey, I had the weirdest dream. She said, I dreamt I was in some football stadium and I went underground and there was this battle. There was a Black Ops soldiers and there was these weird hybrid aliens and kids. And Tyler's like, oh my God. That's what John told me he did on one of his missions. Now, he's convinced that his Australian girlfriend, who he's never met, by the way, at this stage, astrally traveled to the underground Black Ops alien mission and was alongside John, but astrally. Make sense? Shortly after this, Tyler said something very similar happened to me. I had an extremely vivid dream where I was with John and we were breaking into the second floor office of a Walmart in Jefferson City, Missouri. He explains that we were sent in on a Black Ops mission to extract some blueprints or schematics
from a Walmart
that were some form of alien technology.
From a Walmart.
Now, in the dream, he claims, and very vivid dream, like it obviously happened, he went into this underground section of the Walmart because every Walmart, like not everyone, but most of them has some kind of Black Ops underground level that the secret government uses. In the dream, he claims that he went into a filing cabinet and he found what they were looking for. But it was all these schematics drawn in crayon like it was done by a child. Now, Tyler says this all checks out because it was actually from a child who was remembering his past lives as an alien scientist. And that's why it looked like a crayon drawing. Now, when he came out of this vivid dream, he tells John about it. And John's like, how did you know that? How did you know about the underground Walmarts? And he's like, I just dreamt I was there. And then John's, tell me more about your dreams. And so Tyler starts opening up to this Black Ops John character about his ability to control dreams, right? And this prompted, John was immediately interested and started like probing him with all these questions. And he's like, I'm not sure how it happened. I'm not sure like how I got this control. But John's like, I'm going to run this past the higher ups. I'll get back to you. Now, in early 2022, Tyler woke up from a dead sleep feeling drugged. Something had happened the night before. And immediately these memories of the previous night start floating into his mind. And he feels like he's just been in a war zone. And he remembers waking up in the back of an SUV, extremely confused. He wasn't sure how he got there. He remembers it being dark outside. He felt drugged. There's other men in the SUV with him, all decked out in tactical gear. They've got rifles. They've got, all the kit. And he realizes that John is in the SUV with him. He's like, John, what's going on? Where are we? Where are we going? He's like, follow us, kid. We'll take care of you. And he believes that they pull into this parking lot between two buildings. They seem vaguely familiar to him. And he's pulled out of this unmarked car and he's told to follow these men. He claims he's escorted between two buildings. He sees a door marked K7 and he's taken inside this structure. Now, he did notice looking side to side that there was a construction site off to the side and he sees the name of the construction site. It was the company he had worked for 15 years, Parrick Construction. Anyway, they push him inside this underground base. They walk down a few flights until he enters this large warehouse. And when they finally approach this door, John and these other men, they enter. And inside the room, it's this peculiar room. He says it's kind of like a hangar, but it's got this enclosed section in the middle. He said the floors were metal. The room was like the size of a gymnasium. And there was this weird platform in the middle. He says it was obvious the center of the room had a very specific purpose. Surrounding the platform's perimeter were individual squares, like 6 foot by 6 foot. And on the far side of the room, there was a woman in a hazmat suit. John walked over to her and started putting on his own suit. So in the end, Everyone's either wearing a mask, like some kind of gas mask, or a full hazmat suit. Everyone except for Tyler. And he's looking around, and this woman in the hazmat suit says, "All right, anyone without a mask, exit the room now." And Tyler starts walking out because he doesn't have a mask. And John's like, "Not you, buddy. You stay." He's like, "Okay." So the door is sealed. This chamber is sealed. And he notices everyone in the room staring at him. They're all looking at Tyler. And he steps onto this platform. And John reaches down and flips up this handle. And this kind of container comes out. And he pulls out this glowing glass canister. And inside it is this strange creature. It's like swimming around inside this canister. He said it was so hard to identify. It looked like some kind of toxic black goo creature, like a weird techno spider, like some kind of spider. He drew it. This is what it looks like from his sketch. And it was like writhing and like some kind of cheap sci-fi effect inside this jar. And John is holding it with these tongs, like he's worried to even get near it. Now, I did an AI version, by the way. That's better. That's better, right?
Is this been taken from the Reiki studio?
Well,
ready to be placed back in?
He says John opens up the canister and this weird spider thing just starts rising up into the air and levitating and instantly starts emitting this horrible frequency. He said everyone, unless they were wearing a full hazmat suit, everyone that was in the room was like, like on the ground, writhing in pain.
A hazmat suit wouldn't really make differences to the audio in the room. Like,
you're really picking on the details of this story. But
it's in the details where you find, what could be going on.
Tyler is somehow not affected. And when he hears the frequency from this alien spider creature, he realizes that's the same frequency that the entities that intruded his dreams would use to get to him. And it all suddenly clicks. He realizes that's how they do it. That's how these entities paralyze you in their dreams. They use this frequency. And he claims something happened where he suddenly understood what to do and he understood this was a test. He refocuses his mind on this creature and it's floating up in the air at this point. Instinctively, Tyler says, "I knew what to do." He starts feeling that familiar frequency from his vivid dreams and starts doing what he does in his dreams, but now, he claims, in real life. He says he starts leaning into the field and levitating up towards the creature, just like he would in one of these dreams. He hears everyone in the room go, "Oh!" And he says, "I was just as shocked as though they were." He comes eye to eye with the squid spider creature. He says, "It psychically tried to penetrate my mind, but because he was used to the sleep paralysis attacks, he knew how to counter it." He reaches out towards the creature with his right hand, and a ball of white light forms.
Hadoukens it.
Dragon Ball Z style. And he's like, "Oh!" Sends out his love energy to the creature. He said, immediately a bright flash illuminated the room and it vaporized in front of everyone. Let me read directly from the book. He says, everyone in the room immediately recovered from their paralysis and could stand again. The room erupted in applause. And everyone clapped. Look at Aaron's face. That's so perfect. It's just like torture at this point. Just sitting here listening
you know what?
to it.
I don't. So I'm not this person. I haven't undergone potentially these experiences. But as an outsider hearing it for the first time, to any reasonable person, it sounds completely batshit crazy. And it's got all the elements that we know from the super soldier genre.
Isn't it strange how these guys, it's like a contagion.
It is like a contagion.
It's really like this virus of the mind where people hear these stories about they've got these secret lives of secret spies in another planet.
But also it's like they're selected, they're picked out by powerful groups to, have them vanquish something, or, it's always like defending against something or fighting something.
They're special, they've got powers. People hear those stories and then suddenly their own memories of being a person like that, it starts to emerge. It's this really strange pathology, isn't it?
Look, and good on him for, if this is true, because obviously you would know that you're going to be subjected to ridicule by describing these sorts of stories. But the problem is, for me personally, in this believing this story, is that in my opinion, it's like, as I pointed out, like you're right, Ben. It's the same kind of genre. It fits this same kind of mold, maybe subtle differences, but the reality is like it's this same kind of MO that happens with these super soldier stories.
And a lot of people are tempted to say that all these people are grifters, that they know it's bullshit.
Oh, no, I don't think they're grifters.
And they know there's a market for it.
Some of them are, but I don't think all of them are.
I think that's a really small percentage. And like you say, most people, they really believe it.
They do, yep.
He claims at this point, John was like, all the people in there were talking with themselves. And finally, he heard John say to one of the other, soldiers in there, he's like, I'm sending him in. Now, Tyler claims that his memory kind of elapsed at that point, but he came to in some kind of gunfight in the middle of a shopping center. And there was rubble everywhere, and he was in some food court. And at the top of the escalators was one of these creatures, one of these aliens.
Do you see though how, like, again, it sounds like fantasy, but now.
Oh yeah, like it's just like, this is not even halfway through. Like there's so much more after this. Not that I have this as a segment. I'm talking in the book. Like his story keeps going. He claims he took this thing out as well with the same technique. And what I like about the book is he writes down, like he sketches the details from the dream, right? So that's the building he remembers, that's the K7 door. But then he looked on Google Maps and he started to look up Boeing facilities in Southern Illinois, and he finds one that's like 30 minutes from his house. And he looks it up, and here's the photos. It's the two buildings like he remembers.
But didn't he say that's where he used to work, or that was like connected to a company he used to work for?
He said he looked to the side and saw the construction site in this vivid dream, and it was, the company he worked for 15 years. So what he does is he drives out to this Boeing facility, and he says he got these weird gut feelings when he was out there that this is definitely the place. But
I would just get a weird feeling that the plane was going to drop out of the sky, being Boeing.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's why all the tech's failing, because they're spending it all on Black Ops projects.
Clearly.
They've got no money left for their plane or stuff. But he claims when he was there, a truck drove past, and it was the company that he used to work for. And so he follows the truck, and there is a construction site right there. So it totally matched his dream. He found a Boeing facility that matched his dream with the construction site from his dream. And so ultimately he says, could it be just a coincidence that my former employer of 15 years had a contract with Boeing? Now, I'm going to leave the story there. Part 2 is all the memories that have now emerged of this other timeline.
There's another timeline?
Yeah, where he was one of these secret super soldier spies.
Okay, so, I mean,
just like you pointed
we could
out,
see where this was potentially going.
And so, props to Tyler. Bravo.
Yeah, good on him for coming out with this story. I find it difficult to believe.
There he is on the left. Oh, don't believe it. I don't believe a word of it. But it's funny because a lot of these things, there's a bit of truth mixed in, and personal experiences are personal experiences.
Well, this is a thing. I think people can have these experiences, like it kind of fits this same mold as well, in that he's had a traumatic event take place, then strange paranormal phenomena starts taking place. But what happens, right, is like they get led down this path by, perhaps he is interacting with entities, but these entities are now, like, sometimes they go down the super soldier road, sometimes they go down this wild goose chase. How many times have we described that? Is this not similar to that in some way? Is this not in itself a wild goose chase? Like he's driving out to Boeing facilities that he's seen in a dream.
Yeah, I mean, it's like he was so skeptical of his friend Larry. He was clearly having paranoid delusions. Yet chapters later, I'm sorry, Tyler, but it looks like you're having paranoid delusions as well. I mean, what else can we say about it? I mean, I feel like this image of the woman doing Reiki, it kind of looks like yeah, energy's going in, but was it energy going in or was it more
Was it
craziness
something else?
going
Yeah.
in?
Well, I mean, the other possibility as well is that it's all just for fun. Like it's all just, part of a story just because it's like that's your audience as well.
Well, you're saying he's just sitting there laughing because
Maybe, I don't know. Like I'm just offering
they're making
potential
bank.
outcomes.
They're making bank. They've got a conference as well.
Well, this is the thing. Like, is it a super soldier conference?
Yeah, Rebels of Disclosure at the Pear Marquette Lodge and Conference in Grafton, Illinois. When is that? May the 12th to the 15th. This year we'll be uncovering truths on all subjects pertaining to disclosure and the Great Awakening. You'll be hearing from experiencers, researchers, authors, whistleblowers, energy healers, psychics, remote viewers, and more. Where's the list of guests? Like, who's
Is
speaking?
Laura Eisenhower in there somewhere?
Oh, guaranteed. Let's have a look.
You know what this is in a way, though? It's kind of like a modern version. I say modern, but just a more recent version of like Project Camelot.
Oh, Zaysan's going to be there. He's a Pleiadian contactee. Lily Nova, space photographer, is going to be there. Patrick Riley, 16-year combat veteran. He probably worked on the bases with Larry. I don't know who any of these
I don't know
people
any
are.
of them.
Arcturus Ra's going to be there? Dude, can we go? No one told me Arcturus Ra was going to be there.
Again, referring back to Boeing, I think Qantas only flies Boeing's International, so I'm not going anywhere.
Look at these workshops. Oh, back in the day, we would go to that.
Yeah, we would have, but not anymore.
And then by the first day, I'd be like, Aaron, we need to stay. To be like, this is retarded. I'm going home. I'm going to book the first ticket out of here. I'll be like, no, when we came here, we got to do the stories. That's a wrap for the show. Thanks to the guys, Tyler Kowala for Bleed Through, Tales from Another Timeline. It's available now. Super fun. That's like not even...
Yeah, it is fun. I'll give them that.
Not even halfway through. It is a bit of a banger. So props to him for putting that out. I'll link to it in the show notes. That's a wrap for this free edition of Mysterious Universe. Thanks for listening. Tons of stuff coming up in Plus. Remind us?
Yeah, we're going to be looking at some extreme, although after what we've just been talking about, some extreme, allegedly true humanoid encounters that kind of cross over into the levels of high strangeness that you don't commonly get with these encounters. So that's all coming up in a moment.
Awesome. If you want to get access, head to mysteriousuniverse.org/plus. Check out the subscriptions page and all the details are there. It's $9 a month, helps support your favorite show. You get access to the big extensions we do every single Friday. And of course, Plus members get an entirely exclusive show every single Tuesday as well. You're getting more than double the content if you sign up for Plus. Plus members also get a high quality audio version of the show, totally ad-free version of the show. And if you join our MU Max tier, you get access to the massive back catalogue going back nearly 2 decades worth of shows. That's a wrap for this free edition of MU. Thanks for listening. If you're on Plus, stick around for the good stuff after the break. For everyone else, we'll catch you next week.